So I've taken some packaging and I've cut it down to 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches for the base of my ATC. And I'm gonna just coat one whole side with a glue stick, and I'm gonna cover that with a piece of scrap pattern paper that I had from my scrap box. I'm just making sure that it's on securely. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. And I find that glue sticks work great to do this because it sticks immediately and it's very secure. This paper is actually some Bristol paper that I have die cut with a rectangle die and blended on some Tim Holtz Distress inks for a sunset kind of background. Then for the cityscape, I used a Paper Smooches Super 2 cityscape die, and then I've backed the windows where all the little windows were cut out with some gold glittered cardstock. And as you can see there, I'm using a little pickup tool to add back in the black windows so that it looks like some of the windows are lit and others are not. Now on a little scrap of cardstock, I am stamping out some adorable greeting farm stamps. This is from the Little Heroes collection, and I'm stamping out the little girl as well as a mask. This little girl has her eyes closed, and I didn't really like that for a action hero character that was going to be flying through the air. So I really like the fact that I could change it up with that little mask with the eyes peeking through. Now for the skin coloring, I kept it really simple because these images are so small. It's really easy to color these up with Copic colors. And I'm placing all the colors that I'm using over to the left, but you can also get a full listing on my blog post, which I will link to in the description box below. But I'm basically just blending in colors. I start with the lightest, move to the darkest, and then back down to the lightest. That's the E21, that was the darkest part of the shadow. For the cheeks, I'm also adding some R20, which I don't know if it's going to get covered up fully or not with the mask, but I'm blending off the edges with the lightest color. That's the E50 around the R20. And now I'm going to start with the highlights in the black hair that I'm hoping to color up this little cutie with. I start with the blue. This is a B01 because I find that a lot of black hair has like a blue cool undertone. And now I'm just going to mark in where I think the darkest shadows would be. And this I'm doing with a kind of mid-tone cool gray color. And a lot of this is going to get covered up with the darker shades, but I just wanted to mark in where those darkest shadows are going to be and get in that first layer of the dark gray color. And doing this extra flicking at this point just adds to the textured look of the hair. Now I'm moving to the next darkest color, and that's the C7, and I'm going to do some more flicking. You can see here a little bit, I think that the C5 flicking was a little bit longer. The C7 flicking is a little bit shorter. And I'm making sure that the areas that are going to be in the darkest shadow, I'm not even worried so much about the flicking, like underneath her face by her neck, between her face bottom and her arm. And I'm just adding more flicks here with this kind of mid-tone dark gray. And that extra flicking, again, is adding to the hair textured look. Now this is the darkest C color that I'm going to use. There are darker. There's a C10 and there's even 100, which is like a black. But I find that the C9 gives a nice, almost natural look to black hair. And as you can see there, I'm filling in the darkest areas. And I'm trying to, maintain those highlight areas, but not have them stark white. So you'll see me going back in again, going now down the darkness scale. So this is the C7, and I'm going back in and making sure that the areas that are in full shadow won't have those white areas peeking out. Now this is the C5, and I'm just adding more flicks there in that center highlighted area. And now I'm going to start coloring up her little superhero costume. I'm starting first with a red cape, and I'm going to just use 2 colors. Normally for Copic coloring, I use 3 colors for any one colored area, but these areas are so small. So for the red areas, I'm just going to start with an R24 and then add some shading with R27. And you can tell there, I'm making sure I leave the white of the cardstock showing where the whites of her eyes would be. Now I'm doing some very simple, really quick shading just where her body would cast a shadow onto her cape. And then for her mask, the tips and the center areas of the mask where, you know, if the mask was put on her face and it would contour around the roundness of her head, those areas would be receding and might have a little bit of shadow. And you can tell here I'm not being very careful about my coloring outside the lines because I know I'm going to be fussy cutting all of this out. Next, I'm going to be coloring up her little superhero top in blue. And I'm starting with a fairly light blue, that's a B02, and adding a little bit of shadow just along the edges and maybe creating kind of the look of a fold in the center of her top with the B05. For the yellow, I'm starting with the base of Y11 and adding just a little bit of shadow with the Y15, just where I think there might be folds on her little skirt. For the boots, I decided I was going to do a little, stripe down the center of her boots and then do some dark gray around the edges of her boots. And I did a C7 and then I decided I'd go a little bit darker and went with a C9 so that it would pick up the darkest shades of her hair in her boots as well. Now I'm just using some wet glue to glue on that little mask with the eyes right on top of her face. And look, it looks like she has got eyes open. And now I'm going to use some double-sided foam dots, and I'm putting that all over the back of this little character and popping her onto that little scene. And just to add a little bit of sparkly shine magic, I'm using a clear wink of Stella to add some shine to the red areas of her superhero costume. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this process video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful crafty day.